Tonight, former officer Kim Potter will be sleeping in a cell at a Minnesota correctional facility after a jury returned guilty verdicts in the shooting death of 20-year-old Daunte Wright. I want to bring in Antonio Romanucci, one of the attorneys for the Wright family. Antonio, always good having you on, especially given today's outcome.
Thank you, Yodit. Yes, very happy to be here tonight. Appreciate it.
Your reaction, please, to the guilty verdicts for both first and second-degree manslaughter.
Well, I was somewhat surprised. I wasn't totally surprised. Yesterday I was saying that there'd be a verdict at sometime by noon today, and pretty close on that, not too far away. And, my thought was that they were either going to convict on both counts or we were going to get a hung jury. I wasn't thinking acquittal. I don't know why, but I just wasn't thinking that. I thought that so much time had passed that they were either going to hang this jury or that they were going to convict. And sure enough, we found out something fascinating today, and that's that they reached, a guilty verdict on one of the counts, by Tuesday. So really, what we saw here, it's a real experiment. We saw two deliberations happening, one deliberation on the second count, and one on the more serious count, because we know the jury charged them with going back and deliberating after they couldn't reach a verdict on Tuesday. So really, we had two deliberations, and I think the turning point, in my opinion, without question, was when they asked to hold the gun. Once they did that, yes, I think everything changed, and we can certainly talk about that.
Those were precisely my thoughts. I mean, we have the benefit of hindsight now. I mean, I was confused with the two questions, one being, hey, we can't decide, and I automatically just assumed that they couldn't decide on both counts. But then they asked the question about the gun, so it made me feel as though maybe they just wanted to try to go through it again and discuss and go through the evidence. And so you're right. Now, hindsight is that they already had settled on one count, and they were trying to figure out that first-degree manslaughter.
Well, what we know is this. What we know is that, and she was gun ready many moments before she actually drew the gun. So I think the jury found a path, and I think the prosecution, they did lay it out. They gave the jury the lane for convicting on the more serious count, on the reckless count. She was gun ready for moments before she drew her gun. Then she drew her gun for about 6 seconds, yelling, "Taser, taser, taser," and then she pulled the trigger. With her being gun ready, having her hand on the gun, drawing the gun, and we know that it takes more than one maneuver to draw the gun. You just don't pull a gun out of a holster. You have to unsnap it, you have to push down, pull up. There's at least 3 maneuvers in order to pull the gun out. They determined that it was reckless. And I think the prosecution, obviously the jury instructions were there, the law was there, and they walked them through it, and they were able to eventually walk that lane and convict. And her being gun ready and holding the gun, I think that was ultimately what they were able to do to find a conviction.
Antonio, did it concern you, though? I know you said that you weren't nervous or as nervous, but for an acquittal. But did it make you nervous that you just had Derek Chauvin's trial happen down the street? I mean, in that same courtroom, that is, and he was such a unsympathetic defendant. I mean, he never took the stand, but, you watched him for 9+ minutes doing something to a man, murdering a man. You didn't have officers testify on his behalf to tell the jurors that, they respected him as a colleague, what a great citizen and officer he was. But here you had Kim Potter, who showed remorse, who was a sympathetic witness, who in 26 years had an unblemished record. That didn't concern you just a bit, that this majority white jury was going to just, she made a mistake, but we can't send her to prison. Because that's how jurors think. They think about the sentencing when they shouldn't.
Absolutely. Look, I have to be honest. When I first saw the video, because we all saw that video for the first time during opening statements, when I saw the video of her basically throwing herself on the ground in tears and screaming, I was concerned. I mean, that really got to me. But then, you have to evaluate, who are we talking about? that's when at least, my lawyer common sense got a hold of me. And I understand that jurors don't have the law degree and they have to work through many other things. And that's why I respect jurors so much. But then, you realize she's a 26-year police officer who doesn't know the difference for seconds, for a significant amount of time between gun and taser, and then really throws out the book in terms of being able to help Daunte and worries about herself and is literally throwing herself on the ground. I think those are things that eventually the jurors were desensitized to also, because I can't imagine that they weren't, surprised and in shock and awe of her reaction after shooting someone. I mean, she didn't, stop the car with the intent of pulling a gun and shooting Daunte, right? We all know that. But the consequences, you look at the consequences of a simple traffic stop of, again, I have to say this because I believe it, she stopped a black man. And I think that she was afraid of him. That's why she was gun ready. Would she have been gun ready if Daunte had been white? And that's why equal justice plays such a significant role here, because justice has to be meted out equally. And that's what happened today with this jury verdict.
Antonio, we were just showing Potter's mugshot, or bookend photo, that is. What do you make of her? Can we throw that picture back up of her smiling? This is, I don't know why I get this feeling of her being condescending or antagonizing in some way. I mean, this is a woman who we watched for hours on a stand have a breakdown to the point where the court had to take a break. She couldn't even watch herself on video. And I believe that she was sincere in her tears. Many may, think I'm foolish for that, but I did believe that she felt bad about what had happened. But then you see a picture like that. What are you smiling about?
I have no idea what she's smiling about, because we just listened to 8 or 9 days of her defense team saying that Daunte Wright caused this. Is that what she's telling us with that smile? We should put that argument to rest once and for all in this country. Let's stop blaming the victims. And I don't know what that smile is about, whether it's a nervous smile. I can tell you it certainly seems inappropriate. I don't know what she was thinking at that point. Was someone joking with her? Well, that's inappropriate too. I can't even comment as to why she's smiling or what the reason is. But all I know is that let's put that argument away that Daunte was at fault here. She's the one who pulled the trigger and shot him and killed him.
Let's talk about how the Wright family is feeling about today's verdict. So many celebrated today's outcome, but this was, as you know, a far cry from justice, because they're spending another holiday season without Daunte. Has this given them some semblance of peace or closure?
Well, it's given them, let's put it this way, a little bit of closure. I don't know that it can ever offer them peace. I spent quite a bit of time with the family during opening statement and during testimony. And really just one thing was on their mind. They wanted justice because they want accountability. Now, did that happen today? 100% it did. But you heard Kate. Katie was, we don't want another name out there. We don't want another Daunte Wright. And that's what we're all hopeful for, not only in Minnesota and Minneapolis, but for this country. We don't want to keep saying, people's names. So this verdict was very important today, because now we know that juries will convict police officers if they have malice, such as Derek Chauvin did while he's kneeling on someone's neck, or here in this case, if you didn't have malice aforethought, but you were either careless or reckless, albeit negligent, you will be convicted also, because holding a gun is not the same thing as driving a car. When you're given a license and a badge to hold a gun, you're held to a much higher standard.
Well, outside of the courtroom, or outside the courthouse, Daunte's mother, Katie Bryant, explained the relief that she felt during the reading of the verdict. Let's take a listen.
The moment that we heard guilty, on the manslaughter one. Emotions, every single emotion that you could imagine just running through your body at that moment. I kind of let out a yelp because it was built up in the anticipation of what was to come while we were waiting for the last few days.
Antonio, I know how you felt about how long the jury was taking and the questions and what you were thinking they were going to come back with, but what about the family? How do you manage their expectations? Do you tell them what you think, or do you just kind of let things play out so that you don't maybe overpromise and underdeliver?
No, as lawyers, we certainly have a duty. We have an obligation to tell the family, especially in this circumstance, what we think could happen. Obviously, we don't have that crystal ball, but it's only fair to them that they know all the options that are out there, and not that we can overstate what's going to happen, but they have to know what the possibilities are, or else that's not fair. The family was prepared, although I don't want to think of the consequences, but they were prepared, for an acquittal, a hung jury, and they were prepared for what happened today, for full justice. And we know that they've been calling for this ever since April 11th. On the first day that this happened, they wanted, full justice, and they got it, especially through Keith Ellison and his team.
Now to a clip from the press conference with Daunte's parents. This was actually Daunte's father who made a remark, or actually answered a question from a reporter. Let's take a listen to that.
I want to thank her. I'm going to keep it short.
Antonio, have you spoken to Dad? Do you know why he wanted to thank Potter?
I don't know why he wanted to thank Potter. Unfortunately, I could not be in Minneapolis today, with them. I did get a chance to speak with Katie earlier. We communicated. I did not get a chance to speak to Dad yet. So I'm not sure, but I do know that Dad was overcome clearly with emotion there where he couldn't even speak. So I'm not totally sure what it is that he meant there.
One last question for you, Antonio. Attorney General Keith Ellison, he made some remarks. He talked about Potter's testimony. Let's take a quick listen to that.
Look, it's a lot. I think it's a good sign that she was remorseful. I mean, what decent person wouldn't be brokenhearted and sad if they were involved in something like this?
I thought it was important that AG Ellison also spoke directly to officers. He reminded them that holding them accountable didn't diminish them as officers, as law enforcement as a whole. How important do you think it is, especially given the climate that we're in, where officers do feel like there's an indictment out on them? There are officers who don't want to serve their communities anymore as officers. How important is it that we always need to remind them that this isn't an indictment on the entire, well, some would say it is an indictment, but not about all officers, just the ones that break the law?
Well, I think that's a great question. So I'm going to take one of your words and I'm going to use it a little bit differently. This is not an indictment on police officers. If you look at the totality of this trial, this is really an indictment on the training that police officers get. Are police officers responsible for their own training? Yes. Well, they have to participate in training when it's given to them. And what's clear to me from this trial, Yodit, is that Brooklyn Center really failed in its ability to train its officers. Doing what Kim Potter did on April 11th, drawing gun versus taser, that takes muscle memory, that takes practice, that takes multiple repetitions. You just don't do that one time or two times and then you get it. Because once again, you're holding a gun, you're holding a weapon that is designed for one purpose, to kill. And that's what happened when she discharged, killed someone. So I think what Keith Ellison did was an olive branch in the sense that he's telling the officers, look, we respect you, we trust you, but we also need you to do what you have to do, and that's you have to train. And it goes back to those municipalities.
Wright family attorney Antonio Romanucci, thank you for your time tonight, counselor, and happy holidays to you and yours.